The Book Essence Podcast. Episode 2. Atomic Habits.
Welcome to our deep dive into the world of habits. We're going to be cracking open Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Yeah.
It's a book that is absolutely jam-packed with research and insights on how these really tiny changes you make can lead to some seriously remarkable results.
Yeah.
So get ready, because we're going to be diving into all that good stuff.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Me too.
It's such a good book.
It really is.
It's amazing how often we kind of get caught up in thinking that we need these big overhauls in our lives to see real change.
Yeah.
And Atomic Habits really shines a light on that power of consistency and just making these small 1% improvements that compound over time.
Right. And it's you don't even notice it at first.
Right, exactly.
And then, bam, all of a sudden you're like, whoa.
Yeah, where did that come in?
Where did this come from? Okay, so Claire kicks things off with a pretty compelling story.
Right.
His own.
Yeah.
He talks about how back when he was in high school, he had this really serious baseball injury. And that's incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
Especially considering where he started from.
Right.
Yeah.
It was a huge setback. And what makes that story so powerful is that it goes beyond just his personal experience, right?
No, right.
It illustrates this principle that I think we can all tap into. And so, he uses that personal anecdote, I think, to set the stage for the core message of Atomic Habits, which is, that tiny changes, those seemingly insignificant 1% improvements,
right,
they compound over time to create massive results.
Yeah, and he doesn't just stop at those personal anecdotes either, right?
Right.
He brings in all these really compelling examples from other fields too.
Right. One that really stood out to me is a story of British cycling.
Oh, yeah.
Back in 2003, they were really far from a dominant force in the cycling world.
Right.
But then they adopted this strategy called aggregation of marginal gains.
Oh, yeah.
Which basically means optimizing every tiny detail they could.
Okay, so I'm picturing them analyzing everything.
Yeah.
From the type of tires they use.
Yeah.
To their pre-race meals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Every little thing.
Yeah, they tested different bike seats, experimented with massage gels.
Oh.
They even meticulously analyzed sleep patterns.
Really?
Just to squeeze out every ounce of performance improvement.
Wow, that's dedication.
It is, and the results were astonishing. Within just 5 years, they went from underdogs to this dominant force.
Yeah.
They won multiple Tour de France titles and crushed it at the Olympics.
Wow.
So
that's incredible.
It really is.
Yeah, and I think it's such a perfect example of how those seemingly insignificant improvements, when you add them all together, can lead to those really extraordinary achievements.
Yeah.
But it's what's really important for us, listeners, is figuring out how we actually apply that aggregation of marginal gains concept to our own lives.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's it can feel a little overwhelming, right?
It can be, and that's where the power of systems comes in.
Clear argues that success isn't just about setting goals, it's about building systems that support those goals.
Right.
He even says you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems.
Ooh, I like that.
So it's how do we actually build systems that support those tiny gains?
Yeah. And it's you think about all the areas in life where we could be applying that principle.
Right.
It's work and relationships and health and creativity. And it really does all come down to those consistent daily actions.
Yeah.
But, one thing I've always struggled with is that sometimes it feels like I'm putting in the effort, but I'm not actually seeing the progress. Especially in the beginning, it's where are the results?
Yeah, that's a common feeling. And it ties into a concept that he calls the plateau of latent potential.
Okay.
The basic idea is that, progress isn't always linear.
Right.
We get so focused on seeing those immediate results that we miss the progress that's happening kind of beneath the surface. It's like an ice cube melting. You don't see any change until it reaches that critical point, and then suddenly it's water.
Oh, that's such a good analogy.
Right.
Yeah, because it's so true, and it's so easy to get discouraged when we don't see those instant results.
Yeah.
Because it's we're so wired for that instant gratification, right? And then when we don't get it, it's we lose steam, we give up.
Yeah. And that's why it's so important to shift our focus away from solely the goals to building systems that support consistent action, even when we're not seeing those dramatic results right away. It's about trusting the process.
Right. So how do we actually build those systems? what are the building blocks of a system that really works?
Yeah, that's where habits come in.
Okay.
They are the foundation of any effective system. They're those small actions we repeat consistently, and they have this huge impact on our trajectory over time.
But like, why is it so hard to change habits?
Right.
It's like we can know what we need to do,
Yeah.
Right.
but actually doing it consistently is a whole different ballgame.
Right. Most of us try to change our behavior by focusing on that outcome we want, like,
Yeah.
losing weight or getting a promotion.
Right.
But lasting change actually requires going deeper.
Okay.
So Clear suggests that there are actually 3 layers to behavior change,
Okay.
and we need to address all of them.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Break it down for me.
Yeah, so the first layer is outcome-based.
Okay.
It's focusing on what you want to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
The second layer is process-based,
Okay.
which is where you focus on those actions that you need to take to reach that outcome.
Okay. So like if the outcome is I want to write a novel,
Yeah,
the process might be I'm going to write for 1 hour every morning.
exactly.
But it sounds like there's more to it than that.
There is. The third layer, and this is where things get really interesting,
Okay.
is identity-based change. And this is about shifting your beliefs about yourself, about who you are at your core.
I've definitely experienced that feeling of like trying to change a habit, but feeling like something is missing.
Yeah.
It's like I wasn't fully committed.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost like I was trying to force myself into somebody else's shoes
Hmm.
instead of making the shoes fit me.
Right, and that's precisely it.
Yeah.
Lasting change, it comes from shifting your identity.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about doing the habit.
Right.
It's about becoming the kind of person who does that habit effortlessly.
Okay. I'm starting to see how this fits together.
Right.
So like if I wanted to become a runner,
Yeah,
I shouldn't just focus on like the goal of running a marathon.
exactly.
I need to start seeing myself as a runner,
Right.
like someone who values fitness and prioritizes running as part of their lifestyle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a subtle but powerful shift in mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Clear has this great quote.
Yeah.
He says, "Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become."
Ooh, I like that.
So each time you lace up your shoes and go for a run, you're casting a vote for your identity as a runner.
That's such a powerful way to think about it.
Right.
It's not just like checking off a box on my to-do list.
Right.
It's like I'm actually aligning my actions with the person I want to become.
Yeah, exactly.
But how do we actually bridge that gap,
Mm-hmm.
like between our current identity and the identity we aspire to?
Yeah. That's where understanding the science of habit formation comes in.
Mm-hmm.
So Clear dives into this thing called the habit loop,
Okay.
which is this 4-step process that explains how habits become automatic.
Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me about the habit loop.
All right, so imagine you're feeling stressed after a long day.
Okay, been there.
Right. So that feeling of stress,
Mm-hmm.
that becomes the cue,
Mm-hmm.
the trigger that kicks off this whole habit loop.
Okay.
The cue creates a craving,
Mm-hmm.
a desire for relief, a way to escape that uncomfortable feeling.
Right.
The response is the action you take to satisfy that craving,
Mm-hmm.
like reaching for a bag of chips or scrolling through social media.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, the reward is that temporary relief or pleasure you experience,
Mm-hmm.
which reinforces the entire cycle.
Right. So it's like, that stress, that's the cue.
Yeah.
I crave some kind of relief, so I reach for the chips, and then I get that like temporary satisfaction,
Exactly.
which makes me want to do it again next time I'm stressed.
Exactly. So it's
Yeah.
like a groove in a record, right?
Right. Yeah.
Each time you repeat the habit, that groove gets deeper, making it harder to break out of that pattern.
Totally. And that's where I feel like Clear's 4 laws of behavior change come into play.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's like we're providing this practical framework for like how to hack that habit loop.
Right.
So, either strengthening good habits or weakening bad ones.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm ready to learn how to hack my habits. So
Right.
tell me about the first law.
All right. So the first law is to make it obvious, or for bad habits, make it invisible.
Okay.
So this is all about like manipulating those cues that trigger your habits.
Right. So if it's a good habit, I want to make it as obvious as possible.
Right.
Like, if I want to start running in the morning, put my running shoes right by the door
Exactly. Yeah.
so I can't miss them.
You're removing any barriers to action.
Yeah,
You're making it impossible to ignore.
Love it. And then for bad habits, make it invisible.
Right.
So like, if late night snacking is my downfall,
Right.
I'm not going to keep a bowl of chips on the counter.
Right.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly.
Okay, what's the second law?
The second law is to make it attractive or unattractive.
All right.
This is all about, amping up the appeal of good habits and making those bad habits less enticing.
Right. So instead of just like, white-knuckling it and relying on willpower,
Right.
I'm actually like using my environment and my brain's natural reward system to my advantage.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that.
Right. So,
Do you have any specific strategies?
yeah, so one technique that Clear highlights is called temptation bundling.
Oh.
And it's about pairing something you need to do with something you want to do.
Okay.
It's like, giving yourself permission to indulge in something enjoyable, but only while you're engaging in the habit that you're trying to build.
Okay, give me an example.
Okay, so let's say you love to binge watch your favorite show.
I do love to binge watch my favorite show.
Right. But you also know that you need to exercise more.
Right.
So temptation bundling would be like you only allow yourself to watch that show while you're on the treadmill or the stationary bike.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Right.
Because it's like I'm hacking my brain's reward system.
Right.
I'm associating the exercise with something enjoyable.
Exactly.
Which means that I'm way more likely to actually stick with it.
You're tapping into the power of anticipation and making the habit itself more rewarding.
Okay, I'm sold on temptation bundling.
All right.
Okay, so we've got obvious and attractive. What's the third law?
The third law is to make it easy or difficult. This is all about reducing friction for good habits and increasing friction for bad ones. The basic idea is that we're more likely to do things that are easy and less likely to do things that are hard.
Right.
So, how can we make those good habits as frictionless as possible?
It makes me think about meal prepping. Because, if I have healthy meals ready to go in the fridge, it's so much easier to make a good choice than if I have to come home after a long day and cook something elaborate.
Exactly.
Right.
You're removing those points of friction that might derail your good intentions.
Exactly.
And then for bad habits, you want to make them as difficult as possible. So, if you're trying to cut back on social media, log out of all your accounts so that you have to manually enter your password each time.
Oh, that's a good one.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that extra step
might
be all you need to break that mindless scrolling.
Right. Or at least become more mindful of it.
Exactly.
I love those tips. And I love the emphasis on making the good habits as easy as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to really make those good habits as frictionless as possible, he recommends starting small. He calls this the 2-minute rule.
I'm all about making things easier. So tell me about the 2-minute rule.
Okay, so the 2-minute rule is basically a way to trick your brain into starting a new habit by focusing on just the first 2 minutes. So instead of committing to a full hour-long workout, you just commit to putting on your workout clothes, and instead of writing a whole chapter, you commit to writing one sentence. The idea is that once you overcome that initial resistance, you're more likely to keep going.
That is a really good trick because it's so true.
Right.
Once you've actually started something,
right.
It's like, oh, okay, well, I might as well just keep going.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. I love the 2-minute rule. Okay, so we've got obvious, attractive, and easy. What's the final law?
Okay, the fourth law is to make it satisfying or unsatisfying.
Okay.
This is all about reinforcing those good habits with rewards and making bad habits less appealing by associating them with negative consequences.
Right.
So our brains are wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain, so we can leverage this to our advantage.
Totally. So if it's a good habit, I might give myself a small reward after completing a workout, like enjoying a delicious smoothie or listening to my favorite podcast.
Right.
But if it's a bad habit, like staying up too late, I might set an alarm that forces me to get out of bed at a certain time, even if I'm feeling groggy.
Exactly.
Right.
You're creating that positive feedback loop for those good habits and making those bad habits less appealing. It's like you're training your brain to associate good habits with pleasure and bad habits with discomfort.
Yeah, this is so helpful because now I'm realizing, I can essentially rewire my brain to make good habits automatic and make those bad habits much harder to indulge in.
That's the power of understanding the science behind habit formation.
Yeah.
You're not just relying on willpower anymore.
Right.
You're strategically leveraging your environment and your brain's natural tendencies to your advantage.
This is making me rethink my whole approach to habit change.
I know.
It's not about being like a willpower superhero. It's like being this strategic architect of my habits.
Exactly.
Yeah. And speaking of willpower, Clear has some really interesting insights about that.
Oh, he does, yeah.
Yeah, he argues that self-control is actually overrated. In fact, he suggests that people who have that like incredible willpower.
Yeah.
They're often just really good at avoiding temptation in the first place.
Right.
So wait, you're telling me I don't need to like white knuckle my way through every craving?
No, not necessarily. It's not about being constantly vigilant.
Oh,
Instead, you can design your environment to reduce your exposure to those cues.
oh, okay.
Right, that trigger your bad habits.
So if the junk food isn't there, I can't eat it.
Right.
If my phone is in another room, I'm less likely to just mindlessly scroll.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about being proactive,
Mhm.
not reactive.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because I suddenly feel like a lot less pressure
Yeah.
to constantly resist temptation.
Uh-huh.
I can focus on creating an environment that supports my goals.
Exactly.
Oh.
It takes the pressure off willpower.
Yeah.
You're not constantly battling those impulses. You're strategically setting yourself up for success.
I like that. Okay, so we've talked about like, making bad habits invisible and difficult, but how do we make the good habits even more irresistible?
Yeah. Well, remember dopamine,
Oh, yeah.
that feel-good chemical.
Yeah.
It plays a huge role in habit formation, and we can use it to our advantage.
Okay.
What's fascinating is that dopamine spikes,
Mm-hmm.
not just when we receive a reward,
Oh, wow.
but also in anticipation of a reward.
So like, if I'm thinking about that delicious dinner I'm going to have later, my brain's getting a little hit of dopamine even before I take a bite.
Exactly. Yeah. And that anticipation is a powerful motivator.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why things like social media and junk food and video games can be so addictive.
Oh, yeah.
Because our brains are constantly chasing those dopamine hits.
Right. So how do we harness this like dopamine-driven reward system to make the good habits more appealing?
We can use a technique called temptation bundling.
Oh, yeah, we were talking about that before.
You were.
With the TV shows.
Exactly, right? So it's that art of pairing something you need to do with something you want to do.
So instead of just like trying to force myself to do something I don't enjoy, I'm linking it to something that I actually genuinely look forward to.
Exactly.
It's like a reward system built into my daily routine.
It is, and it works because it taps into your brain's natural reward system.
Right.
You're essentially training your brain to associate those good habits with pleasure, which makes them much more likely to stick.
Okay, so far we've mainly been talking about the power of like, our individual choices and actions.
Right.
But what about the role of like our social environment?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do the people around us actually impact our habits?
Absolutely.
Right.
Clear dedicates a whole section of Atomic Habits to this topic.
Oh, really?
And it's a real eye-opener.
Okay.
We are social creatures, and we are wired to conform to the norms of our tribe.
It makes me think about that saying, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Yes.
Like, if my friends are all super healthy and love to work out, I'm much more likely to adopt those habits myself.
Exactly.
But if my social circle revolves around takeout and Netflix binges, well, it's going to be a lot harder to stick to those healthy habits.
You hit the nail on the head. Our social environment has a huge impact on our behavior.
Yeah.
And so Clear identifies 3 groups that have a particularly strong influence.
Okay.
The close, the many, and the powerful.
Okay, let's break that down. So who are the close?
The close are like our family and friends, the people we interact with most regularly.
Mhm.
And, their habits, they kind of tend to rub off on us,
Yeah.
whether we're conscious of it or not.
So if I want to build better habits, it's essential to be mindful of the people I surround myself with.
Yes, choose your tribe wisely.
I like that. Choose your tribe
I
wisely.
mean, it goes beyond just like, our inner circle.
Yeah.
Clear also talks about the many,
Okay.
which refers to the larger society and cultural norms that influence our behavior.
Right.
We're wired to conform.
Mm-hmm.
And so we often adopt behaviors that are considered acceptable or desirable by the majority.
Which explains why trends catch on so quickly.
Exactly.
Yeah, we don't want to stand out or feel left behind.
Uh-huh.
So we just kind of unconsciously mimic the behavior of the group.
Yeah.
Okay, and who are the powerful?
The powerful are those with status or authority.
Mm-hmm.
So, celebrities, influencers,
Right.
leaders in our field, or even just people that we admire.
Mhm.
We're more likely to emulate the habits of people we look up to
Yeah.
because we associate those habits with success or desirability.
So like, if I wanted to build a habit of reading more,
Uh-huh.
it might be helpful to join a book club
Right.
or surround myself with people who are avid readers,
Yeah, exactly.
because then their habits will kind of start to rub off on me
Uh-huh.
and I'll be more likely to stick with it.
Exactly. You're leveraging the power of social influence to your advantage.
I like that.
Yeah.
And Clear suggests, like intentionally joining groups
Yeah.
that reinforce those desired habits.
Uh-huh.
So it could be a gym, a book club, a hiking group, even an online community.
Right. It's like you have a built-in support system and a sense of accountability.
Right, but what about the flip side?
Yeah.
What if I'm surrounded by people
Yeah.
who have habits that I'm actually trying to break?
Yeah. It definitely makes things more challenging, but it's
Yeah.
not impossible. You might need to be a little bit more deliberate about choosing your social circle. And this doesn't mean like, ditching all your friends and family.
Right.
But it might mean, consciously spending more time with people who align with the person you want to become.
Right. It's about being proactive and creating that environment that supports your goals,
Exactly.
both physically and socially. Okay, so we've talked about choosing the right habits, shaping our environment, and leveraging social influence. But what about the role of talent?
Oh, yeah.
Like, is success all about natural ability?
That's a question that comes up a lot, and Clear addresses it head-on in Atomic Habits. He acknowledges that genetics do play a role in determining our strengths and weaknesses,
Okay.
but he emphasizes that habits and effort are the ultimate determinants of how far we go.
Okay, so it's not nature versus nurture.
Right.
It's like nature and nurture working together.
Think about someone like, Michael Jordan.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
he was incredibly gifted athletically, but he also trained relentlessly to hone his skills. So talent might give you a head start,
Okay.
but it's the consistent effort, the dedication to mastering your craft that separates the good from the great.
That's a refreshing perspective.
Yeah.
Because it means that, like, even if we don't feel naturally gifted in a particular area,
Right.
we can still achieve, like, remarkable things through that consistent effort and the right habits.
Exactly.
It's about focusing on what we can control,
Yeah.
not on what we can't.
And to help us understand why certain habits,
Yeah.
feel easier or more natural for some people, he brings in what's called the Big Five personality traits.
Okay.
And those are openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. So our unique blend of those traits influences how we approach the world.
Right.
And what kinds of behaviors come more naturally to us.
Okay, so, like, for example, somebody who is, like, super extroverted
Yeah.
might thrive in a team environment.
Right.
While somebody more introverted might prefer to work independently.
Exactly.
Right? And it's all about
Yeah.
understanding your personality type. Could be really helpful in choosing those habits that actually align with your natural tendencies.
Exactly.
So it's about working with your strengths, not against them.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
It's about finding the right game to play,
Right.
one that capitalizes on your unique strengths and interests. But even when we found, like, those perfect habits, those actions that align with our goals and our personality,
Right.
how do we stay motivated?
That's a good question.
Right? Because, like, we've all experienced that initial burst of enthusiasm when we start something new.
Right.
But then inevitably, motivation tends to fade.
Yeah. And that's where Clear introduces the Goldilocks rule.
Ooh.
It's all about finding that sweet spot of difficulty. The point where a task is challenging enough to keep you engaged,
Right.
but not so overwhelming that you get discouraged.
Yeah, because I've definitely taken on challenges before that felt too big,
Yeah.
too overwhelming.
Right.
And I just ended up giving up.
It's a common experience. And, if a task is too easy, we get bored, we lose interest.
Right.
But if it's too hard, we get frustrated, we feel defeated. But when we find that just right challenge,
Yeah.
not too hot, not too cold,
Right.
we enter what's known as a flow state.
Flow state. Okay, tell me more.
So think about those times when you've been so absorbed in an activity
Yeah.
that time seems to just disappear. You're completely present, you're fully engaged,
Yeah.
and you're performing at your peak. That's flow state.
Okay.
And it's not just about enjoyment.
Right.
It's also about maximizing your potential.
I've definitely experienced that feeling before.
Yeah.
Usually when I'm working on, like, a creative project that I'm, like, really passionate about, it's like everything else just fades away and I'm completely immersed in the task at hand.
Exactly. And the beauty of flow state is that it makes it easier to stick with good habits.
Right.
When you're genuinely enjoying the process, the effort feels less like a chore
Right.
and more like a pleasure.
Okay, so how do we find that Goldilocks zone? That sweet spot of challenge that keeps us engaged and in that flow state?
Yeah, it starts with Honestly, assessing your current skill level and then gradually increasing the challenge as you improve.
Okay.
So, like, if you're learning a new language,
Yeah.
don't try to jump into, like, complex conversations right away.
Right.
Start with simple greetings
Yeah.
and basic vocabulary,
Yeah.
and then slowly work your way up.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about respecting where I'm at right now and then slowly pushing myself outside of my comfort zone as I gain confidence and skill.
Exactly. And when you hit that Goldilocks zone, you'll not only make faster progress, but you'll also enjoy the process more.
Right.
It becomes a virtuous cycle.
I like that. Okay, so we've talked about choosing the right habits,
Right.
shaping our environment, leveraging social influence, and finding that sweet spot of challenge. But what happens when even those perfectly calibrated habits start to feel a little stale? Can good habits ever become, well, a bit boring?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
And it highlights a potential pitfall that Clear addresses in Atomic Habits.
Okay.
He points out that even good habits can become a trap if we become complacent. It's like driving on autopilot. You might get to your destination, but you're missing all the scenery along the way.
So you're saying that even those good habits, the ones that have served me well,
Yeah.
could actually hinder my growth if I'm not careful.
It's not that the habits themselves become bad,
Okay.
but it's the potential for stagnation that we need to be mindful of.
Right.
Once a habit becomes automatic, we stop consciously thinking about it,
Right.
and that's when we risk falling into a rut.
It makes me think about those times when I've been so focused on like executing my routine that I haven't actually stopped to ask myself if it's still serving me. If I'm still aligned with my goals and values.
Exactly. We can become so attached to our habits, especially those that have brought us success in the past,
Right.
that we resist letting go even when they're no longer the best tools for the job.
So how do we avoid that? Like, how do we avoid that habit-induced complacency?
The key is to regularly reflect on your habits,
Okay.
to ask yourself those tough questions. Are these habits still serving me?
Mm-hmm.
Do they still align with my goals and values?
Right.
How can I continue to improve and refine them?
So it's not enough to just like set it and forget it.
Right.
We need to be actively engaged with our habits, constantly tweaking and refining them as we grow and evolve.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between consistency and continuous improvement.
But how do I know when it's time to level up a habit? Or maybe even replace it with something new?
Think of it like the mastery curve. In the beginning, when you're first learning a new skill or building a new habit, you experience those rapid improvements.
Right.
But as you progress, those gains become smaller and less frequent.
I've definitely experienced that. It's like hitting a plateau.
Right.
Where I'm no longer seeing those dramatic improvements.
Exactly. And that's when it's time to introduce small changes or challenges to keep pushing yourself forward.
So like, if I'm a runner, maybe I start incorporating hill sprints or tempo runs into my routine. If I'm a writer, maybe I join a writing group to get feedback and push myself to try new genres.
Exactly.
So even when we've mastered a habit, there's always room for growth and refinement.
Yeah, it's about embracing that lifelong journey of learning and improvement.
I love that.
And that's what separates those who achieve sustained success from those who plateau or even regress.
Right.
It's the commitment to continuous improvement, to always striving to be just a little bit better each day.
Okay, this is making me rethink my whole approach to habits.
No, it's exciting.
It's not just about building them. It's about constantly evaluating them,
Right.
refining them,
Right.
and making sure they're still supporting my growth. But what about those habits that are so deeply ingrained that they feel like part of our identity?
That's a really insightful question.
Yeah.
And it gets to the heart of, what it means to grow and evolve as individuals.
Yeah.
We often become so attached to our habits, especially those that have served us well in the past, that we resist letting go.
Right.
Even when they're no longer serving us.
This resonates with me on like a deep level. I can be incredibly stubborn when it comes to changing my routine.
Right.
Even when I know it's for the best.
It's human nature to cling to what's familiar.
Yeah.
Even when it's no longer beneficial.
Right.
Think about someone you know who has built a successful career in a particular field, but then realizes that their passion lies elsewhere.
Right.
It can be incredibly difficult to let go of that identity.
Yeah.
To step outside that comfort zone
Totally.
and embrace a new path.
It's like we become attached to the story we tell ourselves about who we are. even when that story is no longer serving us.
Exactly. And that's where the real challenge lies. It's
Yeah.
not just about changing our behaviors.
Right.
It's about shifting our beliefs, about rewriting the narrative of our lives.
So how do we do that?
Mm-hmm.
How do we break free from those deeply ingrained habits,
Yeah.
those patterns of behavior that feel so intertwined with who we are?
It starts with cultivating a growth mindset,
Okay.
embracing the idea that we are constantly evolving
Mm-hmm.
and that our habits should evolve with us.
Okay.
It's about being willing to let go of what's no longer serving us and embracing new challenges and opportunities for growth.
It's about being open to the possibility that we are more than our habits,
Yes.
that our identity is not fixed, but fluid, capable of growth and transformation.
Exactly. And this requires a willingness to challenge our assumptions,
Mm-hmm.
to question our beliefs, and to step outside our comfort zones.
Right.
It's not always easy,
Yeah.
but it's the path to true growth.
Okay. I'm starting to see how even good habits can hold us back if we let them.
Yeah.
They can become like, those comfy old shoes
Uh-huh.
that we refuse to part with, even though they're worn out and no longer support our feet.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And just like we need to upgrade our wardrobe from time to time,
Mm-hmm.
we also need to upgrade our habits.
Right.
We need to ask ourselves, are these habits still serving me?
Mm-hmm.
Are they helping me become the person I want to be?
Yeah.
Or are they holding me back from reaching my full potential?
This is such a powerful reminder because it's so easy to get stuck in our ways,
Mm-hmm.
to become creatures of habit, both literally and figuratively.
Right.
But by consciously evaluating our habits
Mm-hmm.
and being willing to let go of the ones that are no longer serving us, we open ourselves up to a whole world of possibilities.
And that's what's so exciting about this journey of self-improvement.
Yeah.
It's not about arriving at some fixed destination.
Right.
It's about that continuous process of growth,
Mm-hmm.
adaptation,
Yeah.
and refinement.
So it's not about reaching some idealized version of ourselves and then staying there.
Exactly.
It's about embracing the journey, knowing that we're always evolving,
Yes.
always becoming.
And that journey is fueled by our habits.
Mm-hmm.
Those tiny choices and actions that over time shape who we are and what we become.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about how to break bad habits
Uh-huh.
and build good ones.
Right.
But what about those times when we do slip up?
Yeah.
It can be so discouraging, to
Yeah.
make all this progress and then feel like we've taken a step backward.
Right.
So how do we recover from those setbacks and get back on track?
This is where self-compassion comes in.
Okay.
It's so important to be kind to yourself, to recognize that setbacks are a normal part of the process.
Right.
Don't beat yourself up over a slip-up.
Right.
Instead, view it as an opportunity to learn and grow.
Okay, so instead of thinking, ugh, I'm such a failure, I'll never break this habit,
Yeah,
I should think, okay, I made a mistake, but I can learn from it and get back on track.
exactly. It's about shifting from a mindset of self-criticism
Mm-hmm.
to a mindset of self-compassion.
Right.
And Clear offers this really helpful strategy called the never miss twice rule.
Okay.
The idea is that missing a habit once,
Mm-hmm.
it's no big deal. It happens to everyone.
Yeah.
But the key is to avoid missing twice in a row.
Okay, so if I skip my workout one day, I need to make sure I get back to it the next day.
Precisely, it's about breaking that chain of negative behavior
Mhm.
before it becomes a new habit.
I love that
Yeah,
because it feels so much more manageable than striving for perfection.
right.
It's about progress, not perfection.
Exactly. And remember, even small actions count.
Mm,
So if you're feeling overwhelmed,
yeah.
don't try to do everything at once.
Right.
Just focus on taking one small step in the right direction.
So even if I don't have time for a full workout,
Yeah,
just doing a few push-ups or going for a short walk is better than nothing.
absolutely. Every little bit counts.
Mm-hmm.
And those small wins will not only help you build momentum,
Yeah.
but also reinforce your identity as someone who takes care of their health.
Okay. I'm feeling empowered.
Yeah.
I'm ready to ditch those bad habits and build new healthy ones that support my goals.
Awesome.
But I have to admit, I sometimes struggle with staying motivated over the long haul.
Yeah.
Any advice on how to keep that fire burning,
Hmm.
especially when things get tough?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's one that we all face at some point,
Right.
Motivation naturally ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
So it's important to have strategies in place
Mm.
to help us stay on track.
So what are some of those strategies?
Yeah.
What can we do to keep that motivation engine running?
One of the most effective ways to boost motivation is to make your progress visible.
Okay.
We talked earlier about the power of habit tracking,
Right.
but it's worth reiterating how powerful a tool this can be.
So Using a calendar, a journal,
Yeah.
even a simple app to track my progress can help me stay motivated.
Absolutely, because when you see those streaks of success, it reinforces your sense of accomplishment
Right.
and makes you more likely to stick with the habit.
Okay.
Clear even recommends using a strategy called Don't Break the Chain,
Oh, yeah?
which is inspired by comedian Jerry Seinfeld.
Wait, Jerry Seinfeld.
Yes.
What does he have to do with habit formation?
Okay. So Seinfeld is known for his incredible work ethic,
Right.
and he credits his success to this simple habit tracking system. So he would hang a large calendar on his wall,
Okay.
and every day that he wrote new jokes, he would mark a big red X on that day.
Okay.
And his goal was to never break the chain of X's.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's such a simple yet powerful visual reminder of your progress.
Exactly.
It makes you think twice about skipping a day.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to break that streak of success.
Exactly. And it taps into our natural desire for consistency and accomplishment.
Right.
We all want to feel like we're making progress.
Yeah.
And seeing those visual cues can be incredibly motivating.
Okay. This is making me want to go buy a giant calendar and a red marker right now.
I encourage you to.
Okay.
It's a game changer.
Yeah.
And speaking of games,
Okay.
another powerful way to stay motivated is to gamify your habits.
Ooh.
So we talked earlier about temptation bundling, which is one way to make habits more enjoyable.
Right.
But there are other ways to kind of inject some fun and excitement into the process.
I'm all about making things fun, so tell me more about gamifying my habits.
So one way is to create challenges for yourself, or even compete with friends or family members.
Okay.
You could set up a points system, create leaderboards, or even offer small rewards for reaching certain milestones.
I love that idea.
Right.
It's about tapping into our natural playfulness and making the process more engaging.
Yeah.
It takes the pressure off and turns it into a game.
Exactly. And another powerful strategy is to find an accountability partner.
Oh.
So we talked earlier about how social influence can impact our habits.
Right.
And this is where it really comes into play.
So having someone to check in with, to share my progress with, and to like hold me accountable can make a big difference.
Absolutely. It's much harder to give up on a habit when you know someone else is invested in your success.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be a formal or complicated arrangement.
Yeah.
It could be as simple as like, you know, texting a friend each day to report on your progress, or having a weekly check-in call to discuss your goals and challenges.
Yeah, I could see how that would be really helpful.
Right.
It's like having a cheerleader in your corner,
Exactly.
someone to celebrate your wins with, and to offer support when you're struggling.
And research shows that having an accountability partner significantly increases the likelihood of sticking with a habit.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm officially convinced I'm going to find myself an accountability buddy, AVSAB.
I highly recommend it.
Oh.
And the beauty of it is that you can be accountability partners for each other.
That's a good point.
Right. Supporting each other's growth.
Yeah.
And celebrating each other's successes.
It's a win-win. Okay, so we've talked about tracking progress, gamifying habits, and finding an accountability partner. Any other tips for staying motivated over the long haul?
One final strategy that I find incredibly helpful is to focus on the intrinsic rewards of the habit rather than just the external outcomes.
Okay, so like, instead of focusing on like losing weight,
Right.
I should focus on how good it feels to move my body and nourish myself with healthy foods.
Yeah, when you connect with the intrinsic enjoyment of the activity, it becomes less about willpower.
And more about genuine desire.
That makes so much sense.
Right.
It's about finding the joy in the journey,
Yeah.
not just the satisfaction of reaching the destination.
Precisely. And when you tap into that intrinsic motivation, it becomes much easier to sustain those habits over the long haul.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's about falling in love with the process, not just the outcome. It's about finding those activities that like light us up,
Right.
that make us feel alive and energized, and then weaving those activities into our daily lives.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot where effort feels effortless.
Yeah.
Where discipline becomes a form of self-love, and where those small atomic habits become the building blocks of a truly extraordinary life.
I love that imagery.
Yeah.
It's so inspiring to think about how those small daily choices can add up to something truly remarkable.
And it's not just about individual transformation either, right?
Right.
Our collective habits, the norms, values, and behaviors that we share as a society, they shape the world we live in.
Right.
Just as our individual habits shape our lives. Our collective habits shape our communities, our nations, and our planet.
So if we want to create like a more just sustainable and thriving world,
Yeah.
we need to start by examining our collective habits.
Exactly. We
Yeah.
need to ask ourselves, what are the habits that are holding us back as a society?
Right.
What are the habits that are contributing to inequality, environmental degradation, or social unrest?
Yeah.
And most importantly, what are the new habits we need to cultivate to create a better future?
It's a daunting challenge,
It is.
but it's also an incredibly exciting opportunity.
It is.
You know, it makes you realize that we're not just passive bystanders in this grand experiment called life.
Yeah.
We have the power to shape the world around us,
Uh-huh.
not just through our individual actions, but also through our collective habits.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah.
It's a call to action, an invitation to become conscious architects of our collective destiny.
This conversation has given me a renewed sense of agency because, it's so easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of like global challenges.
Right.
But this makes me realize that if we can shift our collective habits, even in small ways,
Yeah.
we can create a ripple effect that can transform the world.
I couldn't agree more. It's a powerful reminder that each of us has a role to play in creating a better future.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
From the power of tiny changes to the importance of identity,
Right.
the science of the habit loop,
Huh?
the role of our environment,
Yeah.
and even the potential pitfalls of good habits.
Mm-hmm.
But as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'm curious to hear from you.
Yeah.
What was your biggest takeaway from Atomic Habits? Like what really resonated with you?
You know what struck me most was the emphasis on the interconnectedness of our habits.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, so beautifully illustrates how our habits don't exist in isolation.
Right.
They're influenced by our environment, our social circles, our beliefs about ourselves,
Right.
and even the larger cultural context.
That's such a great point. It's not just about willpower or self-discipline.
Right.
It's about understanding the complex interplay of factors
Yeah.
that shape our behavior.
Exactly. And once we understand those factors,
Yeah.
we can start to leverage them to our advantage.
Mm-hmm.
We can design our environment, choose our tribe wisely, and cultivate a mindset that supports our growth.
It's about becoming conscious architects of our habits
Yeah.
rather than passive bystanders
Yes.
to our automatic behaviors.
Precisely. And that's what makes Atomic Habits such a powerful and empowering read. It gives us the tools to take control of our lives one small habit at a time.
This has been such a thought-provoking conversation.
It has.
I'm feeling so inspired to take a closer look at my own habits and see where I can make some small but impactful changes.
That's wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
Remember, even the tiniest adjustments can have a ripple effect, leading to positive outcomes that you might never have imagined.
I'm ready to embrace the power of Atomic Habits. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I have one last question for you.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about how our habits shape our identity,
Right.
but what about the flip side?
Yeah.
How does our identity influence the habits that we choose to adopt or reject? It's a bit of a chicken and egg scenario, isn't it?
That's a brilliant question, and it's one that deserves further exploration.
Yeah.
It suggests this dynamic interplay between who we are and what we do, this constant feedback loop where our actions reinforce our beliefs,
Right.
and our beliefs in turn shape our actions.
Like a dance between our inner world and our outer world,
Uh-huh.
where each step influences the next.
Exactly. And understanding this intricate dance can be the key to unlocking our full potential, both as individuals and as a society.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of Atomic Habits.
It's great to be back.
I'm so glad you're here.
Me too.
In the last two parts, we really explored like the foundations of habit formation, like the power of tiny gains, the importance of identity,
Yeah.
the science of the habit loop, and even the potential downsides of those good habits.
Uh-huh.
So now I'm really excited to kind of get specific.
Yeah.
Like, how can we actually apply these ideas to different areas of our lives?
Yeah, let's start with an area that's universally relevant. Relationships.
Okay.
Whether it's family friendships or romantic partnerships, healthy habits are the bedrock of strong connections.
That makes sense. We often think about habits in terms of like individual goals,
Right.
but they really do play a huge role in how we interact with others.
Absolutely. Remember the concept of identity-based habits.
Yeah.
Well, in relationships, it's not just about doing nice things for each other every once in a while.
Right.
It's about becoming the kind of partner, friend, or family member who naturally embodies those qualities that we associate with healthy relationships.
So instead of just remembering to buy flowers on Valentine's Day, it's about cultivating a habit of expressing appreciation and affection regularly.
Exactly. Those small, consistent actions, they speak volumes.
Right.
It could be sending a thoughtful text message, making eye contact during conversations,
Yeah.
or actively listening without interrupting. These small habits, they build trust and intimacy over time.
It's about showing up consistently
Yeah.
in those small ways
Yeah.
that really matter.
Yeah.
But what about those negative habits?
Yeah.
You know, the ones that can kind of creep into relationships, like criticism, defensiveness,
Right.
taking each other for granted.
Yeah.
Like, how can we break those patterns?
That's where the 4 laws of behavior change can be incredibly helpful.
Okay.
So let's say you want to break the habit of interrupting your partner during conversations.
Okay.
You can make it obvious by placing a visual reminder like near where you usually talk.
Okay.
Maybe a little note that says, listen.
I love that, like, just a simple visual cue
Right.
to kind of snap me out of that autopilot mode.
Okay.
What about making it attractive?
Yeah.
Because, you know, interrupting sometimes feels so automatic,
Right.
like almost instinctive.
Yeah.
So how do we make those positive behaviors, like, more appealing?
You could link the habit of listening to a reward, something you genuinely enjoy.
Okay.
So maybe you tell yourself that after a conversation where you successfully avoid interrupting. You can spend 30 minutes reading a book, taking a relaxing bath,
Okay.
or engaging in another activity that you find pleasurable.
Okay, so I'm motivated. I have a reminder. What about making it easy?
Yeah. Start small. Instead of aiming for like perfect listening in every conversation, challenge yourself to listen without interrupting for just 5 minutes.
Okay.
And then gradually increase that time as you become more aware of the habit.
So it's like what we were talking about before, right?
Right.
Starting small,
Mm-hmm.
building momentum,
Yep.
and gradually leveling up.
Exactly.
Okay, and then finally, how do we make it satisfying? Like, how do we reinforce that new positive behavior?
Pay attention to how good it feels
Mm-hmm.
to truly listen and be present with your partner.
Right.
Notice the positive responses you receive when you're fully engaged in a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Those positive reinforcements will help solidify the habit.
It's about focusing on those positive feelings, those moments of connection
Right.
that make the effort feel worthwhile.
Exactly.
This is so helpful.
Good.
I can already see how these principles can be applied to so many relationship challenges.
Absolutely. And it's not just romantic relationships either.
Right.
These same principles apply to friendships, family dynamics, and even professional relationships.
That's a great point. Speaking of professional relationships, let's shift gears and talk about careers.
Okay.
How can we use atomic habits to achieve our professional goals and find more fulfillment in our work?
One of the key ideas from the book is the importance of focusing on systems rather than just goals. So in a career context, this means building daily habits that support your long-term aspirations.
So instead of just like fixating on getting that promotion,
Yeah.
I should focus on developing the skills and habits that'll make me a more valuable asset to my team.
Exactly. Ask yourself, what are the daily actions that will move you closer to your goals? It could be reading industry publications,
Right.
networking with colleagues, or consistently exceeding expectations in your current role.
Right.
Those small, consistent actions, they add up over time.
Those are great examples. And how can we use the 4 laws to make those like career-boosting habits stick? So let's say I want to make it a habit to arrive at work 15 minutes early each day
Okay.
to kind of get a head start and feel more organized.
Great example. To make it obvious, you could set a recurring alarm on your phone that specifically says arrive early,
Yeah.
or lay out your clothes and work bag the night before.
Those are great practical tips. I'm all about removing any barriers to action. What about making it attractive?
Okay.
You know, because waking up early isn't exactly my favorite thing.
That's where you get creative.
Oh, okay.
Pair that extra time with something you genuinely enjoy.
Okay.
Maybe you listen to an inspiring podcast, savor a cup of coffee in a peaceful environment, or use that time for a quick meditation or a journaling session.
Okay, those ideas make it a little more enticing.
Right.
Yeah, I can see myself actually looking forward to that extra time.
Good.
What about making it easy?
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, those mornings can be a whirlwind of activity.
Yeah,
It's so easy to just fall back into those old routines.
you're right. So set yourself up for success by prepping as much as possible the night before.
Okay.
Choose your outfit pack, your lunch, gather your work materials, even set up your coffee maker so it's ready to go.
All right.
Minimize any potential friction points that might tempt you to hit the snooze button.
I love that it's all about making those good choices the easy choices. And finally, how do we make it satisfying?
Yeah.
Like, how do we make sure that early arrival habit sticks?
Pay attention to how much more productive you are. When you have those extra few minutes to get organized and focused.
Right.
Notice the positive feedback you receive from your boss or colleagues.
Yeah.
When you're consistently on time and prepared, those positive reinforcements will make it easier to stick with the habit.
That's a great reminder. It's about focusing on those positive outcomes.
Right.
Those moments of accomplishment that make the effort feel worthwhile.
Exactly. And these same principles apply to any career-related habit you're trying to build. Whether it's improving your communication skills, mastering a new software program, or becoming a more effective leader.
Right.
It all comes down to breaking down those big goals into small, manageable habits. And then using the 4 laws to make those habits stick.
Okay, we've covered relationships and careers now. Let's talk about something near and dear to my heart. Creativity. How can we unlock our creative potential and make it a more consistent part of our lives?
You know, we often think of creativity as this elusive, almost magical force.
Right.
But Clear reminds us that it's a skill that can be cultivated through consistent practice. And that's where habits come in.
So instead of waiting for inspiration to strike, I should focus on building daily habits that nurture my creativity.
Exactly. It's about creating a structure that allows those creative sparks to flow more freely.
I like that. Okay, so what are some small actions that I can take each day to flex my creative muscles?
It could be writing for 15 minutes, sketching in a notebook, brainstorming new ideas, or simply taking some time to observe the world around you with fresh eyes.
Those are great suggestions. It's about integrating those small creative acts into our daily routines. But how can we use the 4 laws to make those habits stick? Let's say I want to make it a habit to write for 15 minutes every morning.
Perfect example to make it obvious, set up a dedicated writing space. With all your supplies ready to go, a special notebook, your favorite pen, a comfortable chair.
Right.
Create an environment that invites you to create.
I love that it's like sending a signal to your brain. This is where the magic happens.
Exactly.
What about making it attractive? Because I know I'm more likely to stick with a habit if I genuinely enjoy the process.
Right. Pair your writing time with a ritual you love.
Okay.
Maybe you light a scented candle, play inspiring music, or make yourself a cup of tea in your favorite mug. Create a sense of ambiance and anticipation that makes you look forward to that writing time.
Those are great ideas. It's about creating a sense of ritual and enjoyment around the habit.
Right.
We're about making it easy.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the hardest part is just getting started.
That's where the 2-minute rule comes in.
Okay.
Instead of pressuring yourself to write a masterpiece, commit to writing just 1 sentence. Once you've overcome that initial inertia, you'll likely find that the words start to flow more easily.
That's a great reminder. It's about showing up consistently, even in small ways. And finally, how do I make it satisfying? How do I reinforce those small creative wins?
Celebrate your creative victories no matter how small. Acknowledge the effort you're putting in and the progress you're making.
Okay.
Share your work with trusted friends or family members and savor their encouragement.
It's about creating a positive feedback loop that keeps the creative juices flowing.
Exactly. And remember, creativity is a journey, not a destination. It's about embracing the process, experimenting, and allowing yourself to make mistakes along the way.
Right.
Those mistakes are often where the real breakthroughs happen.
This has been such an inspiring conversation.
And I'm glad.
I'm feeling energized and ready to apply these principles to all areas of my life. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise and for guiding us on this deep dive into atomic habits.
It's been a pleasure. I'm always excited to talk about the transformative power of habits.
I know our listeners are going to be buzzing with ideas and ready to make some positive changes in their own lives.
I hope so. Remember, the journey starts with a single step.
And that step can be as small as putting on your running shoes, opening a notebook, or simply saying good morning with a smile.
Beautifully said.
Until next time, keep those atomic habits firing.